Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight. I know that we've got people coming live, but there's also a number of people that I know that may not have registered because they are so excited in this topic. So it'll be absolutely fantastic. Just a background, those that don't know me, my name is Karina O'Brien. I'm the founder of Working Mama and the Working Mama Village. And this space out of my own need to actually find a community to inspire me on how can I be a mum and also have a career, because I was wondering, how am I going to do this? So it all started when I was about 6 months pregnant with my first son, and it's grown into a podcast and also the Working Mama Village membership. So I have been able to meet a number of amazing people along the way. And one of those amazing people that I've actually looked up to and been inspired by is actually Ellen Hooper. She has such a interesting background and a very amazing story. We've actually also recorded a podcast together around also job sharing and also a patchwork career. So that's coming out in a few weeks' time. It's so exciting. I've actually had to split it into 2 episodes because there's so much goodness in it. But yeah, I'm really excited by tonight's masterclass. So usually this is just for the members, but we decided to open it up considering how exciting and how impactful as well the topic is. So along the way, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We do have time at the end for a Q&A. And Ellen has got a fantastic background. She is a mum. She, as what would say, is a recovering lawyer, and then went into HR, and now she is the HR at a bank, and also then has got her own leadership business as well, and then she's also a mum to 2 kids. So I'll let her also do the introduction. But over to you, Ellen, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Karina. When Karina said she has to split the podcast into 2, she means that I wouldn't stop talking. Thanks so much for joining us. I know we've got a lot of people kind of off camera, which is totally fine. I assume you're doing some other stuff. I was hoping we could be pretty interactive tonight. And I know that we've got a lot of people who are going to be listening to the recording because it's really awesome. Actually, we've got people from different time zones, and a shout out to one of my oldest friends, Caitlin, who's going to listen to the recording from Perth, and my cousin Erin as well. Hi guys. Hope you like it. I just wanted to start by saying welcome, and I'm just keen to hear from you what drew you to this topic. Maybe you can drop in the chat, and what you're hoping to get out of our discussion tonight. Great work, Jennifer. All right, Jennifer's putting kids to bed. Kim can't work out how her camera works. But let me see if I can help you with that. Probably not. There's a little icon down the bottom that has a video on it. You should be able to press stop and start video. Lots of people doing lots of different things, which is awesome. Hello to our friends from Future Women. Thanks for joining us. Great. So we've got this is something that Janine would like to get better of and feel less guilty. Guilty is such a common thing that shows up for working mums. Hi, Kim, we can see you. Well done. Guidance on how to actually set boundaries. Great. We're going to cover that. And manage a team. I need to delegate to them more. Thank you, Kim. That's really awesome. Yep, the work-life integration from Karina and ideas of boundaries and when trying to do everything. Absolutely. Look, and the reason why I actually spoke to my business partner. So I run a leadership training and development business called The Growth Collective, and I run that with an awesome business partner, Michelle, and we cover a lot of topics, and I was speaking to her about, hey, what do you think I should talk to this particular group about in the masterclass? And she was like, definitely delegating and definitely boundaries, because it's such a good tool that we learn in leadership, but it's actually a really good tool that we can use in all elements of our lives. And I'm just laughing because someone here is hiding from their family. Well done. Because the tools I want to go through today are things that you can use like in all of your relationships. And I've got a bit of a philosophy that leadership, parenting, and marriage all share incredibly similar skill sets. And I like to think that whatever it is that we train and teach people in the leadership space can be used in all different aspects of our lives. Okay, cool. I'm just going to check if there's anything in the chat that makes me want to change direction. Okay, perfect. This is always the exciting. I always ask this question at the start of a session, and every now and then I'll realize that everyone thought it was something different to what I thought it was. So I'm excited that we're all agreed. I've got a few slides I'm going to share with you all. I'm just going to make sure I can see you too. Perfect. We've all become super users at Zoom. I was actually on parental leave in 2020 with my second, and I remember going back to work just feeling like the world's capability and technology had like expanded so intensely and really needing to kind of catch up in that space. But I've worked Zoom out now too. Okay, great. Let's talk about delegating. I'm really keen to understand, what does delegating mean to you? What do you think delegating is? Some people said they want to get better at it. Great. Giving your tasks to other people. That's really beautiful. Passing on the load. I love the word passing there. We talk about sharing the load a lot. So passing and easing my load has come up in the chat too. Those are really great words. All right. And what's great about that is I think we can all see that there's room for delegating in all areas of our life. Oh, using everyone's skills. That's a really lovely way of putting it too. That's great. We'll talk a little bit about how we can choose which tasks are best done by who as well. What stops you from delegating? All right. Would anyone like to come off mic and tell us a little bit about that? I'm a coach, so I can wait all day. Thanks, Kate. Kate, did you know you put your hand up?
Yeah, just mucking around with the banner bar with all the icons. Apologies. I was trying to put my hand down as well as unmute, but that didn't work. So I'll put my hand down in a sec because the banner bar's gone. Perfect. And apologies, everyone. I'm on my phone because my laptop and the internet is just not playing nicely today. I, really like your point about getting to grips with technology. Let's make the technology work for us and our relationships is what I say. I'm working in a leadership role in public health, and my role is actually all about digital health and technology. So I can hear you fighting the good fight there. I've got a challenge because I work with a really high achieving team, and we all seem to value autonomy. There is a hierarchy, I guess, that the organisation is sort of going with, but we have lots of situations which seem to undermine it, and I'm really struggling if I kind of don't have that sort of delegation authority endorsed. We just sort of keep spinning around in circles, and people, basically are choosing sort of not to do the things that need doing. And I think there's a real sort of theme at work that it's quicker to do things yourself. But so, I guess, I want to know a little bit more about helping people to really understand the kind of the levels of delegation, and that it isn't actually micromanaging. I think there's a big misunderstanding about that. So yeah, I hope that kind of sets a bit of a theme for tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. And lots of what you've just shared is really resonating in the chat. So there's lots of themes about, I prefer to do it myself. I think I can do it myself. It takes more time for someone else to do it, except for me. And Kate, because you've got your mic off already, I might ask you, what's the long-term problem with that approach of thinking that it's faster to do it ourselves? What's the impact and implication of that?
I think it's absolutely capability that if we don't sort of provide a pathway for other people to have a go, we just kind of can't raise the next generation of leaders, and also, you know, the burnout factor, because we just can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. And when we think about delegation, it's so interesting, the things that hold us back, the things that are coming through the chat. And I'm going to go to you, Kim. I'm excited to have you contribute. There's a lot in here about managing ourselves, actually, that's coming through these chats. And yeah, cool. Thanks, Sonia. And managing our mindset, I think, towards delegating that's coming through. I'll go to you, Kim, before I add anything else. What would you add?
My particular challenge is I have a large team, but they're all part-time.
Yeah.
So I'm not, if I want things done regularly, it might be that somebody's only in on a Monday morning and a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah. Great. Okay. And there's always a version of challenge that comes with handing over work for other people to do. And so that's a specific logistical challenge, but sometimes we'll feel like people don't have the right capability, or, you know, we're not quite sure if they can be trusted, or will they do it in the way that we want it to be done, really shows up as well. Okay. What do you guys think the impact is on working mums and a hesitation to delegate? Catherine just said more mental load. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are you able to tell us more about that? Is Sarah the right pronunciation? Oh, I'm going to do the classic. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, is that better?
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I just think kind of like, would it be stereotyping in that working mums, how much time have they got? Are they willing to take on more roles, senior roles? That kind of thing I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You know, because my situation is unique in that, and the reason I put it flippantly, that my delegation team are stubborn, because I am a writer, so I'm very much me, myself, and I delegate roles to my family, and yeah, they're very stubborn. So I think that's where I'm coming from with the stereotype analogy. I think, yeah, that working mums, you know, would they want to, without actually asking working mums, you know, are you ready to take on more work, more roles, etc. Because I've got older children, and yes, I am ready, but no one's ever asked me.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. All right, I'm going to give, so firstly, this is what I hear so much of in coaching. So this group of however many we are now on the chat have a very similar experience to lots of women around the country and around the globe. So that won't shock anyone. That's why you're all here. And, you know, in the 45 minutes, I can't promise to have any silver bullets, but I do have some tried and tested techniques that have worked for me and worked for my clients. So my first delegating tip is to actually start with something a bit out there, which is, do I need to do this at all? And I just took a photo of this afternoon. This is the whiteboard in my house. And with my firstborn, I have this really vivid memory at about the 6-month mark of just walking past this whiteboard every day. Actually, he must have been older if he was using a whiteboard, but I just have this memory of walking past this whiteboard every day and being like, I must clean that, I must clean that, I must clean that. And I did actually clean it one time with like methylated spirits, I think. But this is just such a good example. You can see we no longer clean this whiteboard. Like that's just something that I've just completely don't need to do. And when I decide it's something I need to do, and like this is a home example, but there are lots of this stuff that happens in the workplace too. Filing emails, or I don't know, giving long updates or holding specific meetings, you know, that if we really think about them, do we really need to do them? And the lens I kind of use is, well, what's the impact of not doing it? Whose standard is it really? And when I find things that's something that is just my standard and my standard alone, those are the things I cut first. So I'm going to start by challenging you to find one thing at work or at home or whatever, wherever it shows up in your life that you're doing that you think that you probably don't really need to do anymore. Who feels stressed? Has something come to mind for anyone? I'd love you to share in the chat or come off mic. Tell me your whiteboards, make a commitment to the group. Oh, there's some stuff in the chat. Oh, Kate, don't reply to emails which you were CC'd into. Genius. What else? Does anyone else have something that comes to mind? Ironing tablecloths. You can see I'm not great at housework. Yes, Janine's not going to accept meetings that don't have a clear purpose or agenda. Ooh, what a boss. Yeah, Catherine isn't going to acknowledge all the WhatsApps that she receives anymore. Okay, my next tip is then saying, do I need to do this quite as frequently? And for me, and I hope this is a no judgment zone, but we don't wash our sheets as much as we used to. Other things at work, like some meetings have changed from weekly to fortnightly. Here's an example of things I don't need to do quite as frequently. In my executive role, I've also done some like pretty big negotiating political work to change some board reporting to be less frequently as well. That took a bit of time. Sometimes you've got to put the effort in up front. Great. All right. I'd love you all to make a commitment to something that you're going to do less frequently.
Can I just ask a question on that one?
Yes.
Do you suggest kind of calling out that you're doing it less frequently, or do you kind of quietly quit and do it less frequently?
I think it really depends what it is. And I love the lens of who's impacted by this. Like didn't tell anyone we're washing our sheets less frequently, but you know, team meetings that's a discussion we had about, is this rhythm really working for us and what are we getting out of it? Yeah. So I love role modeling. And I also think that when you start to show up as someone who has really strong boundaries and someone who it's known is mindful of their time, that can actually be really powerful for a change in the way that others interact with you and the assumption and expectations that people make about you and how you operate. So I'm a big fan of clear communication, but I also like not all workplaces are functional or safe. So that's why I kind of stick with it. It depends. Did that help, Catherine?
Yeah, it's good. I think there's some scenarios that you just quietly make a change. And there's some that I agree, like it would be good to call out and do that kind of self-talk in front of others about why, I'm doing this with intentionality and this is what I'm hoping to achieve, kind of stuff in terms of that leadership modelling that you've just described.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And look, in the work I do, I work in the people and culture space. And I was just doing some work with a colleague who specializes in organizational redesign, and that often has a lot of cost-cutting vibe to it. That's the official term. But she said something amazing, which in one client she was working with, they were trying to work out what all these technology applications were. And there was like 90 of them. And they asked people for a list of what they could turn off. And, it came back like none of them. We've got to use them all. And so they took the approach of they turned them all off and they waited to see what people asked for back, which was about 5. And so I think there's a lesson for us about what could we trial and error. So what could we turn off and see what happened? And what would that mean? Because when we're trying to make behavioral change, thinking things as an experiment can really help keep our brain not in flight or fight or freeze. It can help us kind of stay in a place of innovation and I'm just seeing how this goes and I'll just see what happens, and that can make us more courageous. All right, and then this is a big one with delegation. It's, do I need to do this myself? And who else could do this? And when we ask that question, I think it's really important for each of us to have a criteria that we use when we make that decision. Because I'm just going to come back to the things that we really said up front, which is, why don't we delegate? Well, because someone else isn't going to be as good as as I am. It'll be faster if I do it myself. Like, we've got lots of good reasons about why we should keep doing things ourselves. And that will have a particular version in a workplace context. So a lot of us will be worried about reputation or, career progression or like that kind of personal brand perspective. But I think this is even harder at home, particularly if we're talking about our kids, because it's really hard to experiment with like the thing that matters most to you in life. And I like to think about it as like we're always experimenting on them in what we do. Yes, Sarah.
Hi, Ellen. So I have just a really quick question. So on that theme, like, I have submitted some work that's now been accepted for a marketing team. I work for a charity with refugees, and I produced some work, and it's a not-for-profit, so I kind of had to sign an agreement that my work would then be marketed on Instagram and for their websites and stuff. I've given up my control and my work to them, but I'm not happy with what they've produced. And I've set up meeting upon meeting. And I feel like I've given up my autonomy and my hard work. And I'm really not happy with the way they marketed it. So I had to delegate it because it's a team that was created for me, because I'm not able to mass produce this work. So while it's great that I've delegated because I don't have time, I'm not happy with what they've done with it. So what do I do?
Yeah, and I think that's the experiment part of it, right? Which is being really like sometimes life teaches us what our criteria is, but there is an interesting reflection as well, which is, you know, now that I've got the gift of hindsight, which we don't have when we're making decisions. So, you know, you took a gamble and you rolled the dice, and maybe you'll make some different decisions next time, and that's a great way to build a skill. But also some hindsight things of, is it better for my work to be out there in an imperfect way rather than not at all? I think is like another interesting reflection.
Yeah.
What actions might I take now to get to a place that I'm more comfortable with, or what do I accept as learning that I put towards the future?
Yeah, true. Because I've just put 2 projects out. I didn't like any of them. So I've reported back to my boss and said I hated them. And they've totally kind of like all the hours I've put in, they've not reflected that. So then she said, well, you need to organize a meeting with them and communicate this to them, because they don't know that that's how you feel, and don't simmer silently. Yeah.
That sounds like good advice to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why knowing our own criteria is really important. So I'm going to share my criteria with you, which is just an example. But I like to ask, like, I like that phrase, zone of genius. So is this in my zone of genius? Is this something that I'm really good at and I really love to do? Is it fun? Is a big thing for me. And is it aligned with my values? So I'm kind of, and thanks so much for sharing that, Sarah, because this stuff's really hard, and there's always a real risk when the kind of 1 out of 10 times we have a bad experience that it really causes us to reinforce the mindset of like, well, I have to do it all myself. And the challenge with that, you know, like nothing changes if nothing changes, but also other people don't get the chance to learn as well. So I'm keen, if anyone, like, this might be something you reflect on, but if anyone's kind of clear about their criteria for what they should do and what other people should do. Yes, I can repeat my criteria, Kim. So mine are, is it in my zone of genius? Is it fun? And is it aligned with my values? And that's why I no longer do any grocery shopping.
Well, in your learn of genius?
In my zone of genius.
Zone of genius, thank you.
No worries. Thanks for clarifying that. There'll definitely be someone on the recording who's glad you did that. I also went to an awesome conference a couple of years ago, and someone said that her criteria for outsourcing, particularly at home, was, will my kids remember this in 10 years' time? So she said that she, you know, outsourced all the ironing because, like, you know, does it really matter to anyone in the household who does that? One of my other colleagues recently said to me that her rule for volunteering at school is, will my kids notice? So she's like, none of this fake committee stuff. It's like reading in the classroom, going on the excursions. So it just like, none of those are perfect criteria, or, you know, it's the people who organise the fates are obviously very impactful for the school, but it's just knowing what our own personal criteria are. Does anyone have something that comes to mind? Yes, okay. Does anyone have a criteria they want to share? Yeah, Karina's really great at values and purpose aligned decisions. So values and time with family. That's a great criteria. So I really encourage you to reflect on that, because this part is the hardest part, because it's the yeah, can someone else do it well enough? Is a great question, Kim, because this is where we'll see the most shift. We can start having a different perspective on that. And I wanted to ask you about this phrase. So what does this phrase to mean to you? If you want something done right, you need to do it yourself. Who's heard that before? Who was raised on that? Does anyone know who this is attributed to? Napoleon Bonaparte. I'm just wondering if that's the person we want to be taking advice from. All right. I think this idea, like it's come up a lot during our conversation. I think this kind of mindset is heavily ingrained with why we do a lot of work ourselves. I've also in particularly when it comes to kids, got a bit of a theory from adult education, which is, you know, you have a baby, you stay home with that baby, you spend many, many hours with the baby, and you then have the PhD in the baby. And when you go back to work and then you look at sharing that load with the other adult in your household, it's really easy to be like, they are not as good as this at this as I am. And whenever I think that, I really like to remember the first time I changed my son's nappy. And like, I had no idea how to look after a baby when I first had one, like none. And I went through trial and error. And a lot of the time when I think about like delegating and sharing and letting other people learn in their own way, in their own time, like I like to reflect on how I learned to be a parent. And it was through making lots of mistakes and like finding a way and fit that suited me. Yeah, and I like to think there's a lot of benefit in giving other people the opportunity to do that as well. Okay, so I'm going to recap. Some more practical, tactical tips about how to delegate. The first thing is to be really clear about your expectations. So I had a mentor who used to say, particularly when I worked as a lawyer working with junior lawyers, if something comes back that's not what you thought you asked for, you haven't asked properly. So spending your time up front with what is it that I need to be done? How can I be clear about that is really useful. And that's why I also recommend that you spend time preparing your delegation. And when I say prepare, I mean the amount of structured thinking that you can do in literally 5 minutes is actually quite extraordinary, and it's worth putting that time up front. What do I need from this person? What are the time frames? How do I expect them to check in? Just some really good quality preparation and communication. And then my big thing, and this is at home and work, is agreed on the desired outcome. So what are the standards? And I think this is where a lot of delegation breaks down. And I think particularly in households, a lot of delegation breaks down because you said that you would wash the kids' uniforms, but they've come out with paint still on them. And so therefore, I must now do all of the washing myself. So being really clear about the standards. And then my big tip is like, get out of the way. So remember that others learn by doing and that learning takes time, and it will not be the same way that you would have done it, and it will not be as good as you would have done it the first time. And it really helps to remember back to the first time that you did that task, and that it probably wasn't very good the first time you did it either. So the really important loop into the delegation, kind of set expectations, be clear about the outcomes, not the process, is feedback. And I like strengths-based feedback. So I really like the way how you clearly articulated the mission statement. But what I'd want to see next time is some more succinct summaries of the research. And then why? Because when we give the board all of the research without a summary, they don't read it, or it doesn't cut through. Yeah. All right, I'm going to teach you a framework to use now, but any questions on that before I move on? Amazing. Yes, we need to remember to treat the adults in our lives like adults. And I think that's something that's really easy as a working mum when you spend so much time with children. To like, yeah, forget to move into your adult to adult conversations. All right. Has anyone come across the GROW model before in coaching? Cool. I love this technique. It's a bit of a flip on the GROW model, which I'll take you through. So if you hadn't heard it before, then that's no problem at all. The GROW model is a framework to ask questions, and it's usually used in coaching or development. This is what I call coaching in 90 seconds. So this is a specific framework so that when someone comes to you with a problem that is not yours to solve, you have a technique to hold that work away from you. So we're going to give you we're going to give you conversation guides to hold a boundary. So this is how we do it. Normally when we're coaching, we say, hey, what's the goal you want to achieve? And then we say, what's the reality? So what are you currently finding? What's happening right now? And then we ask people to go through, what are the options? What are all the ways you could possibly solve this? Because we find that with options, we get into quantity thinking, which expands our thinking. And then we go to an action. Hey, what are you going to do next? Yep. So with this, we flip it. So the reality is what's happening right now. And it works really well when someone comes to you with a problem. Hey, Ellen, I was really hoping that you could talk to the marketing team about this challenge we're having with the website. And this is really great when that's like not at all your job, which I feel happens to a lot of us in corporate life, especially if you're good at solving problems. I might be attracted to coming and asking you for your help. So the first question I not like to ask people is like, oh, great, there's a problem with the website. So what is it that you were hoping to achieve? And then it'll usually be something like, yeah, there's just a broken hyperlink on the website that we need fixed. Cool. So with that question, you've helped the person define the problem for themselves. And this can be tricky because often you know what the problem is and you will find yourself going into solution mode. Does that happen to anyone? Yeah, so many nods. Oh, and a nice hand up. Thank you. All right, cool. Then I like to ask the person straight away, oh, cool. So what are some ideas you've had already? And this is normally when the person knows exactly how to solve the problem. Or if it's tricky, I might say, oh yeah, what else might you try? So some expanded thinking. And then the wrap up's really important. This is the most important part of the question. Cool. What will you do next? Not what do you need from me? Not how are we going to solve this together? Okay, cool. Now you've got those options. Great. What will you do next? Like what might get in your way? And there might be some obstacles that actually are part of your remit that you want to solve together. And what, if any, support do you need? So you have the support questions absolutely at the end. Awesome. I think we've got time. I'm really happy to role model a problem that someone tries to give to you and give it back if anyone would like a go. Does anyone have something that comes up in work or at home? I'm happy to have some fake husbands in the room. Any takers? Who thinks they could have a go at this at work or at home? What do you think might be different if you ask this set of questions? Happy to jump into the chat. I know there's a lot of people in kitchens and bedrooms. Yeah, great. Thanks, Jody. So this might be something. So Jody's saying that her challenge with this comes with her managers, because we get a lot of ad hoc things outside the scope of my team. So Jody, is this something that, no problem at all, is this something that you might teach to your managers so you can all be aligned on it? This comes from a really great article. Sorry, the idea came to me from a great article called Who's Got the Monkey?, which is a Harvard Business Review article. It's from the 90s. It's not, it's probably got some like animal rights challenges overlaid. But it's got this idea that as you walk through the workplace, like work is about people trying to throw monkeys onto your back, and the role of leaders is to not accept them. So that's a really great read that I'd highly recommend. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jody. So using the technique so they understand that these tasks are not mine or my team's. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great technique for things that are outside of role and remit. Any questions about that? All right, awesome. Okay, so here are my top tips for holding boundaries. So these things are really integrated. So if you're good at delegating, it's a real foundation to holding boundaries. I think delegating is kind of the Teflon from stopping things coming into the circle. And boundaries is kind of that idea of if you've already stated a boundary to really hold to it. So a really good tool I like to use, because I can be an overcommitter. I can also get really excited by things. Or I think, like many people, my first indication or response can be to say yes to something, especially if I think it's going to help someone. So something I've trained myself to do is say, let me think about it, or let me get back to you, because that just helps me to short circuit my brain trying to ruin my life for me, so that I can actually really think about whether I've got capacity. Also, if you become known for someone who reflects on things, I guarantee you that people will start working with you in a different way, because you won't just be the place for people to go and quickly get things solved. And the vast majority of reasonable functional people will respect, yeah, I've just got to think about that. Thanks for letting me know, but I've just got to think about that. And my other top tips is diplomatic ways to say no. I mean, no is a good one. That's always an option available to us. But I think especially if you're working on the edges of this, the straight no might be a bit tricky. So polite ways to say no. Thanks for thinking of me, but I've got a lot of other things on right now. Thank you for the offer, but that's not aligned with my career goals. I don't think I have capacity for that unless we want to reprioritize X or Y. That's a really powerful one, because that's got optionality for the person that you're working with. I'm not available at that time. Optional, unfortunately, depending on whether it is actually unfortunate or not. Have a think about the unfortunately indicates that I would be happy for you to invite me again. So if it's not actually unfortunate, you might train yourself to drop the unfortunately. Or that sounds like something that's in Zed's remit for things that are out of bounds, out of scope. All right. I'm really keen to tell you a little bit about our leadership programs, because we cover all of this stuff with much more in the different leadership programs we have available at the Growth Collective. But I'm just going to pause and take questions for 5 to 10 minutes. I've got some in the chat here. Yes. I work in HR team, so people use Grow on me all the time. And it's useful. I think it always expands thinking. So I'm always happy for a bit of grow. Kate, with the booking in meetings, there's a trick I wanted to teach you all, which is, I think it works in both Gmail and in Outlook. If you set something to, if you are out of office, particularly for part-timers, you can actually set a meeting invite into out of office, which means it will automatically decline a meeting that comes in, and that can be a really beautiful boundary setting technique for part-time. So that's a tip as well. Yeah. Great. Any questions?
I've got a question. I feel like I can apply all of these to my team. So kind of, you know, looking down, but it feels harder to kind of look up and utilize some of these strategies, particularly trying to kind of shield yourself and your team from some of the noise above.
Yeah. That seems very fair, and like I'm quite well practiced at these, but I had a boss when I would say, here are the 3 things on my to-do list. If we want to add that 4th, what should we reprioritize? And she would always say, could you come back with a plan about how we could do a 4? And I was like, great, now I've got 5 things on the list. So some people are impenetrable. I think you can use these techniques managing up. I would just kind of use them slowly and surely. And another thing that can be really helpful with managing up is actually to say to a leader, hey, one of my development areas is actually managing my time and managing my capacity more effectively. And so, you know, here are some techniques that I've learned or I'm using to do that. Could you help me with that? And I find that can be a great way to start a conversation, assuming that your boss isn't a monster, because that can be tricky.
Yeah, no, definitely not monsters, just busy people, overperformers, perhaps. Yeah. No, I think that's good to kind of call it out as a learning goal, and so to kind of put them in the position that they get a heads up that you're going to be applying it, and that's what the purpose is and the like.
Yeah. I find that is a good technique, especially, I mean, ideally your leaders would ask you for feedback, but I know that's not how every leader operates. Did you have a question, Lisa? Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, hi, apologies, I'm on the phone too, so it's a bit not as easy to use. But I guess what you're saying makes complete sense, and I get it, and I feel like I've heard it before, but, you know, it's great to hear it again and stuff and put it all together. But I guess my problem is it's kind of, once you break your boundaries and kind of not everything's balanced, it's trying to, I guess, remember this stuff again and keep it in check. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, resetting. I think resetting on this is the same as with any goal. Like, I really like the micro habit idea. So when you feel like it's gotten a right way from you and the thread's been pulled and it's all over, I find that we can often get into thinking of like, oh, well, next year or in some time in the future, then I will start. So I really like the micro habit, and you know, the micro habit can be something that's really grounding. Like, I'm like, honestly, drinking a glass of water every morning or going to bed before 9 p.m. Like, what does it mean for you? What's the most impactful way for you to take care of yourself that's very achievable? Because I often find with this stuff in particular, we are the least resilient at it when we're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I know that's not, that those things might not seem like obviously related, but I find for boundaries, like if you start with what's the thing that's most grounding for me, that can help you move from overwhelm. And then you can think about, all right, and what's the next, like, one thing that resonated with me from today's session that I'm going to try. So I really like the let me get back to you. I've got a post-it note here on my computer that says, let me get back to you. And so I don't know, there's so much self-improvement stuff out there, and I feel like we can often be like, oh, and I, you know, if I just had like 6 small cups of green vegetables a day and, you know, went to the gym 3 times a week, and, you know, it just adds up. So I really recommend choosing one thing that you think is going to make a difference and be really consistent about it. Once again, I'm sure that's not new information, but yeah, the got back to basics, I think, really works.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. I'm just going to come and look at some questions here in the chat. Clear is kind is a beautiful reminder from Kate, which is a Brené Brown saying. Yeah. Okay. So someone's asked about people-pleasing tendencies and uncomfortable feeling of saying no. I'm sure that's a completely unique experience that no one else in the group is familiar with. I find for if that shows up for you a lot, and in our training we work with the DISC methodology, and often, like, then we'll say that the S part of the profile, the accommodating part of the profile, can show up for a lot. So I find that thinking about the impact on others of you getting the short-term gratification of not upsetting anyone is actually one of the most helpful ways to bust through people pleasing. So the thing that tends to happen with people pleasing is I will say yes to you because you're right in front of me and I don't want to upset you right in front of me. But really tapping into the implications of that. And often what that means is the people who we then say yes to the least are like the people that are most important to us. And being really cognizant of that and kind of keeping them in mind in your motivation of doing this and holding boundaries can be really powerful for people who are really strongly aligned to being like accommodating and supportive. And the other thing I really like in leadership with that is what disservice am I doing this team member by doing this work for them? Because honestly, you're limiting their growth. And I know that's usually not the intention, and that comes up a lot. If there's a lot of protection, like, oh, I don't want them to try and fail. I don't want my boss to be upset that they're not good enough, whatever that is. You hold people in place when they don't get the opportunity to try, fail, and improve. And so I find for people pleasing and uncomfortable saying no, really tapping into the benefit for others, for you getting good at this skill, can be really motivating. Tips on reminders. I think about what works best for you. Like, my husband puts reminders in his phone. I joke that he has a reminder to breathe, but you know, like, that works for him. Once it doesn't work for me, I'll just ignore it after probably at the first time. The post-it note works for me. You know, is it blocking out a piece of 15 minutes in your diary every day that works for you? Is it an accountability partner? Is it telling a friend? Is it telling a like a spouse? Is it telling a colleague at work that you're working on it? Can you hold me accountable to it? Like, what is it? What works for you to embed practices, I think, is important to remind you of that. Is it a gratitude journal? Is it a weekly check-in? You know, is it journaling? What makes sense for you? And then a question here about what kind of things we tell managers to implement. So let me tell you a bit about our course now, because we just got 5 minutes to go, and I know probably everyone's wanting to go to bed. This is not the slides I thought I had, so that's exciting. Here we go. So we've got 2 key flagship programs. One's for leaders, for people who have been in leadership role, kind of newly in a leadership role in the first 2 years of leadership, or just haven't had access to training in the past. And we focus on these key things. So it's 6 workshops over 4 months. We focus on self-awareness and communication in the first workshop, and we use a DISC profile to do that. Then we have a whole setting on providing context and connecting your people to purpose. The third workshop's on setting expectations. The fourth one's on giving feedback, which is a really important skill. And we talk about positive strengths-based feedback as well as constructive feedback. And then the fifth session is holding people to account. So a lot of the content from today is from that fifth session about holding people to account. That's a 3-hour session, so we go into much more detail. And then we focus on developing people and talent. So that runs both in Melbourne and also virtually. Our next workshop for that is kicking off on the 21st of March. It's $2,750 for that whole 6-session workshop. And we've got a discount code here for you today. That's something that you could use your new assertive skills in convincing your boss to send you to. We've got an email called Convince Your Boss that's got a template for you to send, or if you've got any people in your team that you think could benefit. The other program we run is Strategic Communication for Emerging Leaders. That's a 1-day program. It's for people who aren't in leadership roles yet, but are like starting to think about that in the next 1 to 2 years. And it really focuses on holistic and strategic thinking, because that's what leaders tell us, that individual contributors, like that's the gap between where they are and leadership. So it focuses on stretching your problem solving to think about the context, the content, what matters to the audience, what your preferred style is, and how to adjust it to other people's styles. So our next one in Melbourne is on the 20th of March, and then we've got a virtual course of that coming up in May. And just because we've got a few minutes left, I know some of you are members of the Working Mama community and village, which I am as well, but we've got lots of people who have come who aren't members of the village yet. So Karina's very kindly also offered a 10% discount to the Working Mama Village. And I'd also really recommend you listen to her podcast. I really enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to when our episode comes out in a couple of weeks. And also check out if you're returning to work or have young kids, also check out Karina's Return to Work program. Okay, it's exactly 9 o'clock. Holding our boundaries. Karina, can I hand over back to you? We've got mute gremlins.
Yes, I've got too many windows going on here with lots of things going on. So yeah, look, thank you so much, Ellen, for such an informative and engaging session. As you see, there's lots of elements to this, and also just around boundaries. I actually did a podcast as well around this topic, but there's so much that you can put into boundaries and delegating. As you can see, it's such a big topic, and that's also why Ellen, as part of her course, spends 3 hours on this, because it's so vital. And as we know, and what Ellen has really shown tonight, what we can apply in our workplace, we can also apply a lot of those principles at home as well. So the way that we delegate in the workplace, we also then can delegate at homes, and then we're also empowering, our partners. So as Ellen said, the first time we changed a nappy, it wasn't great. The first time our partner may do something, yes, it's not going to be what we would do often, but even then, on a flip side, my husband hates the way that I do the washing, so then he does it all. So it's one of those things about how you delegate, not only with yourself, and also do that as well. I'll send everyone an email to say thank you very much, but when it comes about delegating, I've actually got a mental load checklist that you can also then work through about what do you want to keep doing, what do you want to start doing, and even what do you want to outsource and do something else, because also and you can then sit down with your partner and go through and actually have a conversation to really open it up and say, oh, maybe I'm doing too much, or I'd like to do more, and have that conversation. So delegating sometimes is also having a good fact-based conversation with others, and also in the workplace. As Ellen said, communication is just critical in all aspects of our lives, and it's important to have that. So thank you so much, Ellen. You are just an absolute wealth of knowledge in so many different areas. And thank you so much again for such an insightful and engaging workshop. So I know that everyone's really stayed on. So thank you very much. That's late on a Wednesday night. So thank you. Lauren says thank you. Very useful tips. So thank you so much again, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed this. And be sure to follow Ellen and the Growth Collective across LinkedIn, Instagram. Also join their email newsletter. If you're not already following Working Mama, we're at Working Mama Community on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, and be sure to check the Mama podcast. And more than welcome to join the Working Mama Village. We'd love to have you. So have a great evening. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week. And if you're implementing these great tips that Ellen's given, be sure to tag Ellen or even Working Mama in, post or something like that, or even just send a DM, because we'd love to hear how you go with this, to know that it's been beneficial, and even just steps is what Ellen said. So thank you so much, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. It was lovely to spend time with all of you.